Welcome everyone to the Peerspace talk, the last one of the year, with Iva Gumnishka. A little bit about the Peerspace. It started as a dinner group in Sofia, Bulgaria, and since the lockdown has evolved into a regularly meeting virtual meetup like this, with a few different formats. And I think of this as sort of version 3.0, because most of this year we've been running these talk nights. This is the 14th. And yeah, practically as I've described earlier, it's an interactive session, like a sort of informal, intimate TED talk, where we have a speaker that takes about half the time to share about their passion or their vision for the world or their story. And then for the rest of the time, it's like an interactive opportunity to question and take some of the ideas forward and develop the thinking a little bit, or just have a discussion practically. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Iva to take the stage. Iva, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. The people that we have on the call are actually all amazing. They all seem really cool. And I'm happy to hear that so many are thinking about starting their own businesses, or they're currently working on perhaps businesses, or, you know, they have some interaction with the entrepreneurial world in some way. And also plenty of them have a commitment to a social cause or a social mission, which is really great. And I think we're going to be seeing even more and more businesses with a social mission, up to a point that each business and every business is going to have a social mission, or at least be very conscious of the impact that it's having on the environment, on society, on all of its stakeholders in general. So kind of moving towards stakeholder capitalism, how they call it. I'm Iva. It's really great, as I said, to meet you all. I'm here to share my story about how I started my enterprise, Humans in the Loop. In a couple of sentences, we provide data annotation services to AI companies. So companies doing, for example, developing computer vision algorithms or other types of artificial intelligence solutions. We prepare their data. So we collect it, we annotate it, we validate it. And this is the type of fuel that the artificial intelligence industry currently needs in order to be able to create its advanced solutions. But the trick is that this type of work is actually very manual. And we have found in it a way to provide access to employment opportunities to people who are disadvantaged. Particularly, we work with refugees, migrants, conflict-affected people in general. And we started here in Bulgaria in 2017, but since then we have expanded to other countries in the Middle Eastern region. So we work currently in Syria, in Iraq, in Turkey, in Afghanistan, and in Lebanon. And we recently started a new partnership in Yemen. So the entire goal is to reach conflict-affected people who have suffered displacement, and provide them with an accessible and easy type of a job opportunity that they can work from home, remotely, digitally, something which is quite necessary in today's world. And also, we provide them with additional training opportunities and support in order to progress in their careers. So this is our company in a nutshell, but I'm gonna go back to the beginning of how it all started. I was actually a student in university. I was studying abroad in the US, and I attended a conference by a lady who is a social entrepreneur in Manhattan, working with underprivileged youth. And I was so inspired that I immediately went back to my room and I was like, drafting ideas of what can be done, specifically for refugees, which was a topic that was, you know, still quite heated, especially in Bulgaria. So this was the first just spark of inspiration that really got me going. But the initial idea that I tried to emulate from the lady actually was completely different. The only thing that is similar is this effort in involving underrepresented and underprivileged people and providing them with work and training. But the type of work that they were doing was related to sustainability, green urban development, and so on, something that's, you know, really unrelated to what we're doing now. But let's say that the mission was the same, and that was very inspiring for me. So I started exploring different opportunities and models of what we could be doing. I actually shared this with a lot of friends and people that I knew, and some of them came up with ideas as well of like, I've heard of this model. For example, there is this company in Cambodia called Digital Divide Data. They do transcription, and maybe that's something that your people can do as well. So this was a tip given to me by a dear friend of mine. I actually really got also very passionate about this. I was like, okay, these refugees can be helping to transcribe Arabic historical heritage and documents. And I found something, quite attractive in the idea that just got me very passionate. We didn't end up working in that sphere either, but at least it was, another start. So for me, the first tip that I learned through this journey in this very early stage was just share your idea with the people around you, with people that you meet. You never know who's going to come up with maybe a connection, or maybe they're going to introduce you to somebody who's doing the same thing, or maybe they're going to give you a tip. A lot of advice. A lot of the advice that you usually receive is kind of useless, and that's okay. But if you're on the lookout and you're really passionate about something, out of all of the advice that people will randomly give you, there will be some nuggets that you will be able to extract. So this is tip number one. So following my journey, I got back to Bulgaria, no money, no previous professional experience. I had done a bunch of internships, and that was it. And no capital either. I was back at home living with my family. And yeah, I didn't have any money to invest in building a business, or, I didn't have anywhere to get it from. I could have taken a loan, I guess, but it was too risky because I didn't have anything yet. So what I decided to do is just start volunteering at a local organization that was working with refugees, just because I wanted to get closer to my topic. So of course, for people who want to start a business, it might be different because it might not have such like volunteering opportunities. But what really helped me was to connect with organizations that were working in the same field. So these were, for example, the Red Cross, Caritas, just like NGOs who were already working with the same target group. They already had a lot of initiatives, and there were a lot of common and shared topics that we could explore. And I was able to identify some gaps that we could fill. And of course, for every type of business, it's going to be different. But for sure, there are people who are already doing the same thing. And maybe you might be able to find a format which fits well with what they're doing, so that you're not directly competing with them and you're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but rather you're finding something which is complementary to what they do, or which is attractive to them as a partnership, or you're just creating a peer company to theirs, like a peer space of different companies, but at least you're not coming from nowhere and trying to create something new, right? So this would be my tip number two. Try to reach out to the ecosystem. I even had printed something like a one-pager on a sheet of paper, and I would just like visit different organizations that came to my mind and just give them the one pager, which had some brief description of what I was trying to do, and some logos that I had gathered from other organizations that said, yes, we love your idea, we want to support you. And again, a lot of these are going to be useless. A lot of organizations are going to say, yeah, we want to support you, we like the idea, but it's going to go nowhere, just because there aren't, let's say, a lot of avenues in which your paths are crossing, or maybe it's not the right time, or maybe they don't have enough resources. So again, a lot of this might be useless, but there might be some nuggets. So definitely, whatever type of a business you're trying to create, just reach out to people who are either in the same industry, and of course, potential clients. So this gets me to the third stage, which was me actually trying to research our potential market. And this was basically, I didn't have any previous exposure to the AI industry. I'm not a programmer. I don't have any particular IT education. As you have seen, it took me 10 minutes just to join this call. So I'm not an IT expert. But there seemed to be a good market for what we were doing, or what we could do, or had the potential or the capabilities of doing in the AI world. And primarily in data entry and normal data tagging. But I was seeing that there is also some word out there, just publications and articles on this new thing called data annotation. So the approach that I took was to basically check what our potential competitors were doing. So similar companies that had even a similar mission. Digital Divide Data, for example, that I mentioned, was working in Cambodia. Samasource, which is another big role model for us. They're working in Kenya and Uganda with people who are living in slums. So these are all some really inspirational models for us, and we took a lot of ideas from them. So basically, we just took part of what they were doing because they had a very large portfolio of services, but we just chose one, which was data annotation. I hadn't even verified whether it was a big market or not, but at least it seemed something quite interesting, quite innovative. So I thought, okay, out of all of these potential services, let's just focus on this one and let's try to be good at it. So this would be tip number 3, research what your competition is doing. You don't have to be incredibly innovative. We didn't come up with any, let's say, new business models, or we didn't have any like IP or any inventions or anything like that. We just took some inspiration from what other companies were doing. It seemed to be working for them. So we said, okay, let's try to tap into this market. It seems that there is something there. So yeah, definitely research what potential clients you might have access to. Of course, the first step is to always reach out to friends, family, people who you know, and just try to get some warm introductions. To me, I had actually the big luck that the same friend who suggested to me the model of digital divide data, she also had met one guy working in computer vision at a conference, and she told him about me. So this is how I got to our first meeting with a potential client. And that was also quite interesting because I didn't go up to him with a pitch. I didn't say, we're building this company, we provide this type of service, because we didn't have anything yet. I just shared my passion for the idea and asked him for help, right? What advice would you give us? What types of services might your company need? What about some of your peer companies? And he was like, yeah, we actually do have a need for this. I don't know how you found out about data annotation and this industry, but there is actually a big need for us and also for other companies that we know. So for me, this strategy has actually worked very well. And we've tried to even build sales campaigns afterwards based on just reaching out to some warm contacts and asking them for help, not giving them a sales pitch, just saying, hey, I'm trying to get into this market. Can you give me some tips? Can you introduce me maybe to some people that you know? And when people are asked for help, they're so willing to help you out because, normally when they hear a sales pitch, they immediately switch into resistance mode or critical mode. They don't like to be sold things. But this happened to us, for example, when we were trying to get into medical annotation, which is a field which is really, that has a lot of potential. It has a lot of money in it. But of course, it's very difficult to get access to companies that are developing medical AI. So what I did was I reached out to some academic contacts of mine, people who are working on medical AI, but within academia and different universities and research centers. And of course, they have access to contacts in industry and other companies, spin-offs from their universities. And they were so helpful by, showing us some tools that we were able to use, or just helping us out to understand the market. And afterwards, the companies that we were introduced to were also really, really helpful just because we were coming with this recommendation. So tip number, I think this is 4, would be to reach out to potential clients and just ask for help, and then afterwards, this can become even like focus group that you're doing with multiple clients. You can scale this up to like a series of interviews if you have access to clients and you're just able to interview them and check what they think, check what their needs are, of course, without pitching, just because people are also going to adapt their answers to what they think you might want to hear. So it's always better to first ask and then to say what your idea is. Just because then people are not predisposed to adapt themselves to your idea. and they can just be sincere and not censor themselves. So I have actually seen some startups in our field who start, their first starting point is doing interviews with 100 computer vision companies, for example. You just reach out to them, you say, hey, I'm trying to research the market and the needs. Could you please dedicate 15 minutes, 30 minutes to a call? And this can be super helpful because it can help you to identify the different trends and needs and pain points. And maybe your idea will transition from one thing to another, but this will give you the necessary validation. Of course, the fact that a company says, yes, this is a big need for us, does not mean that they will be willing to buy it and to spend money for it. So there is, it's not necessarily a guarantee that if 50 companies tell you, yes, this is something that we need, that they're actually going to be willing to spend the money for this, but at least, it gives you some direction about the trends on the market. And of course, here I'm talking much more about B2B. I'm not so experienced in B2C, but definitely, when you're selling to individuals, it's even easier to create this type of large scale consultations, interviews, polls, whatever it is, just to gauge people's interest. And then finally, for me, what really worked was having a frugal mindset. So because I started without anything, I was really cautious about the things that we were spending money on. And of course, we couldn't invest in building our own platform or a tool. In the beginning, I was imagining we were going to have this amazing platform where everybody will be registered and they're going to have access to their trainings and to their work tasks in one place, and we're going to be able to offer it to our clients as well, and it's going to be super advanced. But none of this happened, even to this day, just because we weren't able to invest money in it. And then when we were able to invest some money, it wasn't necessary for us anymore. The approach that we took was to build, again, strategic partnerships with companies, because we said, okay, we don't want to be a technical tool provider and a workforce provider. There are some companies that are trying to do that, but we want to focus on the workforce. There are so many tools out there that we can use. Why invest in building a tool when we're never going to be as competitive as them, because they might have access to better developers and more money and so on? Why not create a partnership where we offer a complementary service to them, and we can refer some of our clients to them, and they can refer clients also towards us, and we can use their tool. So one of the most important things that I've learned even recently, thanks to one of our mentors, is that the organization which has more clients actually has bigger leverage on its partners. So even if we're the workforce provider and we don't have a tool of our own, if we're the ones who are getting all of the clients, tool providers are going to swarm around us. They're going to want to partner with us just because we're going to be able to refer our clients to them. So this was something that I realized even now, that sometimes it's not that necessary to have your proprietary technology or to have your proprietary infrastructure. You can just use whatever other companies have come up with and make use of good partnership and good strategic alliances in order to make that work. And specifically for social impact, that works very well for us as well, just because when scaling to other countries, we could be investing in building a local office and hiring local staff and paying them, full-time salaries. But what we decided to do is, okay, let's partner with organizations in the different countries. They know what's best for the people over there because they're working on the terrain. They have a regular exposure to people. They can help us to adapt our solution, and we can pay them a percentage of all projects that we're implementing in the area or in the specific country. But this can be a way for us to replicate and scale our model without investing a lot in fixed expenses. So this would be, I've already lost the lost count of the numbers, but yes, tip 5 would be start with a frugal mindset. Do not invest too much in fixed expenses and in fixed infrastructure. For us, I remember in the beginning, I was applying to tons of different grants for startups and accelerators and incubators, all of these organizations that are there to feed off on the entrepreneurial spirit of people. I'm not a big fan really, just because I've seen that too many of them are full of just consultants, and they give you a lot of advice, but again, maybe you're able to extract some value from it, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to be successful in building your business. And very frequently it takes up very valuable time that you could be investing in building your business instead of attending, different workshops and all of the activities that these incubators have. So anyways, I remember me, writing a very long business plan for one of these competitions. And I had my detailed budget with like, I need, this much money for my rent and this much money to buy laptops and this much money for desks and equipment and so on. And this was so detailed and it was such a big bloated budget. And in the end, we were actually able to start without any money almost at all, just because we received some computer donations from one organization. We were able to use some space at an IT academy that liked our mission. They said, hey, you can just use a room over here. And this was actually, I remember having a conversation with another one of our mentors in the beginning, and she said, okay, just do a very reduced or simple version of what you imagine. In the beginning, I was imagining maybe a full-fledged call center with tons of people there and so on. And she was like, okay, just get 3 people, go to a Starbucks or whatever type of cafe, get your laptops and start working on this. So her idea was, just do a small prototype of what your business is going to be. And then when you start generating money, you can actually start investing in, having a nice office and getting your laptops and so on. But at least in the beginning, if you don't have any capital, just start with the most simple version of your idea and see whether it takes you anywhere, because you don't have any guarantee that even if you have the fancy office and the computers, clients are going to purchase what you're offering. So instead of investing in upfront costs, better reduce them at a maximum until you start earning money to be able to cover them. And then finally, let me see, I also had something to say about, I forgot my last tip. Anyways, I'm gonna remember. But yeah, it's don't start with a flashy office is gonna be the big one. Yeah, I think I recently read a blog post which was about selling before building, which I found really nice. I think it's not necessarily applicable to all types of businesses, but what the author was saying, and I can maybe share the link afterwards if I find it. What the author was saying is that companies usually start with preparing your product. If you're selling a product, you want to flesh it out, to really create something which is nice and people are going to buy. And then you go up to clients and you say, okay, here's my product. It costs this much money. Do you want to buy it? The opposite strategy actually works very well when you're building a bootstrap business. You go to the clients, and again, you're having a conversation with them about what they need. They tell you what product exactly they want, and then you say, yes, we have it. We can definitely build it, or it's currently on our roadmap. And then you go back and then you start building it. So this kind of building based on the feedback of clients and based on the need of the market has been able to work very well for people like me, for example, who do not have a lot of experience building products. Maybe we're unsure of what the market need is. Maybe we just don't have any money to invest in building products. So for me, it was, for example, we go up to a client and they say, can you do 3D annotation of, this and this type of medical images? And I'm like, yes, for sure, we can do that. And then I go back and I'm like, Google, what is the 3D annotation of medical images? How do you do this? What tools do you use? And of course, just trying to satisfy all of our client inquiries based on that. So maybe that would be tip 6. Sell before you build. Of course, it really depends on what.
Can you repeat that one? Sorry, what was that last one?
Yeah, so I would say sell before you build. So try to sell your service before you even start building it or your product. Of course, it might vary, from business to business, just because, for some companies, if you're building a guest house, you cannot necessarily, place people in it before it's finished, but maybe you can sell them some vouchers and see, how many people buy it. Maybe they can be for like a longer period of time, and then you see, okay, people are interested in this and this type of stay, or maybe this and this I don't know, furniture and so on, depending on what people choose. And this informs your decisions of what to do in your business and how to shape your services and your product. So yeah, these are my tips. I'd be happy to discuss with you guys what you have found in your entrepreneurial journeys, what makes you kind of most afraid or anxious in launching a business, and maybe we can all brainstorm together about how to deal with it.
Brilliant, Eva. Thank you very much. So, wow, it's a hot topic, isn't it? We've got quite a good group of us. So I suggest what we do is for the last 15 minutes of the curated time, because I think I said on the message before, I'm going to run over 15, 30 minutes. I'll keep the room open a bit longer. It's the last one of the year. But questions for Eva first. If anyone's got any questions for Eva, and then we'll do if anyone's got any additional comments or any additional points they want to make. Does anyone have a question? Yeah, go, Jonathan.
It's actually, as you were talking about the sort of reaching out to researchers and stuff like that. So I'm in the middle of a book called Genius Makers, which looks at the building of AI over the last 40 years, basically. And it talks about deep. So you've heard of AlphaGo? Have you? Yeah. So yeah, there's some crazy shit going on with that. But I think a very good book for all entrepreneurs to absorb would be one that I finished called this. So good to great, and I'll relate it to a point I Eva made earlier. Basically, this book, Good to Great, looks at, out of the Fortune 500 companies, only companies that exceeded the stock market by 15 times for 15 consecutive years. They only found 12 companies in 500 that were good to great. And one of the things in all good to great companies was something that Eva said, which was they call it in here a hedgehog idea, that one thing that you do in the market better than anyone else, even if it's not a new or a tangent, a brand new thing. If you do it better than anyone else, then that you can go for that. So I just thought I'd add that.
Thanks very much. Cool, Jonathan. Any other questions for Eva, or any other comments or tips or insights or thoughts? Yeah, go, MTK.
So Eva, I think what you've done is super awesome, and I was really excited to hear about your journey. Just even before today with what you've built. So, two things that I'm thinking about. The first question is selling before you build. Have you had any experiences where you've sold before you build, and then things went really haywire? So I know that the story you've told today is super smooth, and I want to hear about maybe something that you did that, and then you had like those oh shit moments that kind of went off the rails a little bit.
Oh yeah, we're constantly having this even today. Usually I overcommit and I overpromise, and I'm like, yes, of course we can do that, when I talk to clients, and then I go back to our team and I say, okay, you guys have to figure out how we do this. So everybody hates me for when I come up with all of these like crazy or unachievable projects or really ambitious goals and so on. But I think, this has always been a good strategy, even though sometimes, we might fail to deliver, or we might be late, or we might experience difficulties. But, to the client, this is always presented as an exception. Of course, we have the capabilities, but we have, we're facing some temporary difficulties. But this has been really useful just because our team is always challenged to overstep and, to just go beyond what we usually do, to figure out ways in which we can deal with these challenging or ambitious projects. So I think in general, it has worked quite well, but there are definitely some stressful moments where the team said, Eva, how could you promise that we can deliver that? We definitely can't.
Brilliant. Inevitably. Anybody else with a question? Eva. Yeah, go, Sally. Sally, and then Miro.
If you were starting from scratch again, Eva, what would you do differently?
I think I spent a really long time going around and doing unproductive things. I wish I had a system where I would say, okay, I've tried this, and this approach, and here is what worked best for me. Let me just focus on this approach. On approach number 3, for example, that had the best results and that brought us, for example, 2 good clients. I think I've been quite dispersed. I haven't been very tactical. Right now, there are actually a lot of systems that you can use for growth hacking. And you can do very short experiments like the ones that I did, for example. But the key is to very quickly measure what's working and then just focus on that. Because in the beginning, I mean, I've heard it said a lot of times, you have to do things that don't scale. Your first clients are inevitably going to be generated by some warm introduction, or some things that you might not be able to replicate. But at least in the beginning, until you get the necessary traction, you're going to have to do all of these small things that don't scale, some interesting campaigns or ways to get people's attention. But yeah, I wish I was more tactical about my different approaches. I think I was just all over the place, trying desperately every single approach that I could think of. And of course, actually, some of them worked very well. I found that, for example, producing content online that was actually relevant and useful to people, it was a big win for us. Just because even if people don't buy necessarily immediately, it still creates a very nice brand image, so that you're on top of people's minds, and they actually think of you when talking about the topic. So getting content out has been really key for us. And even our name, just because our name is like a very interesting term. It's used in artificial intelligence as an actual term for having humans and artificial intelligence working together. So we have a very good SEO score, even without too much optimization. So I would say, yeah, like having a memorable name has definitely helped us out.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions or comments or insights or thoughts? Yeah, was it Tusimi, was it? Or I saw a hand jump up. Yeah, Miro, go Miro.
Yeah, hi. Iva, congratulations about the past and about the experience and about everything. And I wish you so many gifts based on of your experience. So and of course luck. By the way, I'm writing right now a quite same project, which is for the digital pathology. Using machine learning algorithms for hematology diseases, and but I think I'm not spent so much time here. I prefer to talk after the event. And if it's okay for you, we can arrange a meeting after this.
Yeah, perfect. So I guess that's tip number 7, participate in events, because someone in the audience is going to have a nice use case for you, or is going to have a shared interest.
By the way, I'm writing it right now in the car, because I had to leave the office because of this COVID preparations. So we some sprays. I don't know what is this about, but I'm in the car and writing the project. So it's quite same like your offices before.
Yep, we're all digital nomads.
Yeah,
totally.
Okay. Talk later, and bye for me.
Thanks, Miro. It's great. I'm going to throw one thing in, which is I wrote down a few questions, and they all come back to the same thing. And I think it's partly a comment, but also a question that I think that, isn't it true? I mean, the first question I wrote down was that I think the challenge a lot around startups. So I've been very involved in startups for many years, and in the ecosystem in London for many years, for a couple of years. And one of the big challenges, I think, is like the gap between the moment when you don't have money, but you have an idea, a passion, and turning that into bridging the gap from that to make it a sustainable business. And so what I found, the scheme I was involved with in London, that a lot of people had a passion and they wanted it to be their business, but actually it wasn't a business. It was just like a hobby or an interest, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be a business. And so it's that challenge of how you kind of bridge the gap. And the other thing I wrote down at the end is like, if you can prove the sort of sustainably monetized MVP, it kind of unlocks potentially a lot more money. and then it potentially becomes a much bigger business and can become a much bigger business. But if you don't do that, it will sort of stay as a nice idea or a passion or an interest. And I just wondered if you've got actually, if anyone got any further insight into that, into bridging that gap. How do you effectively do that? Get from it just being more conceptual, more about something I love, to being something that's genuinely, ready for backing, you could say. Eva, you can go first if you want.
Yeah, I mean, for us, of course, for different businesses, it's going to be different. But I think for us, it was figuring out our unit economics and making sure that our expenses are aligned with our income. So, for example, in the beginning, we had a full-time team that we had to pay salaries to, but we had very short-term projects. We didn't have any long-term projects with companies, which made us have to spend money on fixed salaries and full-time people without having the full need of them. So when we switched to part-time work related to particular projects, we knew that our unit economics are now in place, because for every, let's say, hour of annotation that we were performing, we knew that 50% of that goes to the worker, 10% goes to their supervisor, the rest is used within the company. So for us, figuring out and making sure that these are aligned really helped us scale, because we were able to calculate, okay, if we sell 100 annotation hours, we're going to get this much money that we can reinvest back into the company, and actually invest in some of the fixed expenses that we needed. But I think, especially when it comes to full-time salaries and having a big staff and so on around your company, this actually weighs down too much sometimes when you don't have the necessary, let's say, recurring revenue every month that can cover all of these expenses. Yeah.
Brilliant. Nice answer. Tusimi, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I can totally relate with what you're saying, Eva. I have also been so much engaged into developing a company that in the first stage I never had an experience with, that is specifically Projectile Eco Homes Limited, which is manufacturing bioplastic interlocking tiles to solve a problem of dirt floors. And then one of the challenges that I have as a manufacturing startup is to have the traction that is required to in order to attract the investment that is that is what we need to be able to manufacture, or even to start up the plant. So around that, the challenges have been that there is for anyone to get like, for example, for the sale before you build, it has been hard for us, because people are kind of trying to figure out how is it possible for the agricultural waste that we are using, as well as the plastic. How is it possible to use this to make this interlocking tile that we are communicating? And then that meant that the trust was low because of that. And then even if it could be partnerships, a few of them, I think we haven't yet gotten anyone who is interested in helping us during the research and development phase, such that we can get over this and know the test and all that, so that we can even say that we have a prototype. We have this is what we need, and we know that this works exactly perfectly. So my question would be, how would this tip number 6 of the sell before you build, how could we use it in order to gain the traction and also to gain the trust of the people that we need to get from this stage where we are currently? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because manufacturing usually, traditionally just requires a lot of upfront investment in order to be able to sell. But can you clarify who your customers are, just for me to understand?
Our customers are refugees who earn below $5 a day, and also the urban. Basically, we're looking at urban refugees. We're looking at people who are earning below $5 per day. So that's what we are looking at right now, because most of them are affected by the problem.
And so these will be the people who are going to purchase your products?
Okay, like for our model, it is a little bit different, because it is B2B. We are looking at specifically organizations like UNHCR, which is responsible for the infrastructure for the housing of refugees, are looking at Save the Children, which maybe, and UNICEF, which builds the schools where the children go to, and also basically looking at organizations that are working in infrastructure development and safe housing, like like Habit for Humanity. So those would be our targets, such that we can subsidize the costs to be able to sell to these people who cannot afford to buy the tiles. So.
Yeah, okay. So I guess actually your primary customers might be these organizations. So I would suggest you to not focus too much on, for example, the refugees or even the investors, but to rather focus on these organizations who actually have the purchasing power, and to perhaps try to get some upfront payment or participate in some program or create like some kind of a CSR initiative with them, so that they can cover some of your upfront costs to start the actual production. You know, maybe with the arrangement that you produce, you know, certain amount for them. This would be at least my approach, just to focus on the actual buyer who is able to purchase the things that you're producing. I think, you know, because for a long time I was focusing on investors, and I was thinking, okay, how do I get investment or grants or like any type of funding? So I was trying to satisfy, you know, people who would potentially like my idea and fund it. But at these very early stages, it's really difficult to find people who are supporting, you know, just idea stage businesses. I remember, you know, approaching different organizations, and they would always tell me, we need to see some traction. And of course, how can you get traction without any money? It's a catch-22. But I would say, do not focus that much on investors and on, you know, people who could support you with grants and so on. Focus on your buyers and try to get some deal with them.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for the question, Simi. And I'm going to wrap up there the recorded part. As I said, I'm going to keep the room open a bit longer, 15, 30 minutes, because it's our last peer space of the year. So I just want to finally say thank you everyone for coming. Thank you very much, Eva, for her talk. Another round of applause, and for being part of this. There's no future peer space talk to promote at this moment, because we're going to have a little holiday like everyone, and come back in the new year with peer space version 4.0, whatever that may be. It's evolved each year. So just follow the peer space on LinkedIn, and you'll be kept up to date. Thank you very much again for being part of this tonight.